Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we welcome Carl Philhauer, VP of Sales and Operations at Circle Logistics. Welcome to the show, Carl.
Well, thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me.
I am actually looking forward to today because one of my favorite things is, like, obviously peak season is right around the corner, and that's one of the main things that we're going to talk about today. But within peak season, there's also like, I know everyone thinks that, like, oh, this is the only peak season. I am a firm believer there are multiple peak seasons depending on the industry that you're in. However, a lot of them do tend to happen here in the Burr months, and we love that. Before we get too far into that, though, let's get some background on you and how you got started at Circle.
All right. Well, I've been in the industry for many, many, many years. I joined Circle back in 2018 and joined as kind of a jack of all trades. We were busy growing at that time. Since 2018, I believe we've tripled in size, maybe even a little bit better than that. I currently run some of the ops teams and some sales teams, but I dabble in whatever else the company needs me to do. So I've enjoyed it. It's been a great ending of a career. I'm probably within 5 years of retiring, and I've enjoyed the heck out of working with the guys at Circle.
I think that's a very hard thing to hire for, is a guy that can just do it all. Other than just like, hi, we would like to hire you for everything.
Well, you get to a certain age and you start to kind of expect that. It doesn't make me any smarter or wiser than any of the young people, but I've probably experienced some things that they have not. So I'm always looking at life through a different vantage point.
Right. There's less of, I've never seen that before. But when that does happen, it truly is, I've really never seen that before. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, that you've like come across a weird situation. I'm going to say it's an interesting thing, you know?
Yeah, I'd agree.
So one of the things that obviously everyone's starting to do now that it's September is prepare for peak season. It's when retail really pops off. It's when you have food and beverage that really gets crazy with all of the holidays and the food that goes into it. Butterball ships an insane amount of turkeys in October and November. So that does come with a lot of planning. So one of the things that you guys are doing right now, obviously, is making those plans and making those preparations for peak season. But when it comes to kind of the things that you're focusing on, or the things you're really kind of keeping in mind as you guys start these plans and put them into action, what are some of the biggest kind of uncertainties or challenges that you guys are keeping an eye on that says, we should keep an eye on this because it could, upset the apple cart, if you will?
Sure. So this is a weird year. It's a little bit different than most with the tariffs and all of the activity going on with that. Obviously, we're in transition as a purchasing country to nearshore more and more and more, but we're not there yet. Our belief today is peak season is going to be fairly easy to handle. We saw a big rise in activity going back into July, and things have kind of bottomed out since then. There's not a lot of imports coming in from the Pacific Rim, and there's not a lot of purchase orders being made to some of the manufacturers still in China. So we're anticipating it to be fairly slow. Now, that being said, we're always preparing for the worst. So we're going through our due diligence, which we do every year at this time, securing capacity where we can secure it. We work with a number of carriers, close to 200 of them regularly. And we've been reaching out to them to find out where they're going to be at and what they're going to be doing for capacity. We also use boards when we need to, but it's more rare. That being said, we're onboarding and communicating with as many of our carriers that are trusted as we can to make sure that we're equipped to provide the capacity our customers need.
I think that's a very difficult to do because obviously, like, a lot of shippers they don't necessarily know what they're going to do in the future. Because I know a lot of people were, like you mentioned, over the summer, they were pulling a lot of goods forward, a lot of freight forward, just to kind of circumvent any possible tariffs that were coming in, or maybe get ahead of them, have a surplus of inventory just to kind of buy some time as things shook out. And now that things are more or less shaking out, there's still some of that uncertainty because then you also have consumers are spending less. But I think one of the things, especially when it comes to peak season, is we've had some weird peak seasons over the last few years. Obviously, 2020 and 2021 were just kind of, if you have it, get it on the truck and get it in a store because people are just buying things like crazy. But the last few years, it's really kind of slowed down. And I don't want to say that peak seasons like it's going to be like slow or weak or not really like have that typical demand because there is still going to be some of that. Specifically, I think it's going to be more kind of, it's just going to be isolated to more of like that regional demand where you might see some of those spikes, some of that typical freight, but it's going to be some of that surge, if you will, but it might be more isolated to certain regions instead of kind of the whole freight market in the US as a whole. Is that kind of where you guys are kind of are putting some eggs in that basket?
Yes, we are. It is. It's a little bit weird to me. I've been in the business since the '80s. In the '80s, the '90s, and the early 2000s, leading up to 2008, peak season was a big deal. I mean, if you were a retailer, you moved most of your goods and made all of your money during a 3 month period. With the onslaught of the networks and buying goods online, Amazon obviously a huge contributor, as well as being able to buy and have products shipped to your home from retailers. That
Yeah.
changed that shift substantially. There's still a ramp up period for inventory, but it does not look or has not looked like it would have in the past. Now, this year looks closer to it. My guess is if we weren't in and out and on and off of these tariffs, it would look a lot more like it did back in the day. But it's kind of flatlined over the course of the year. Then that capacity doesn't peak just in 3 months; it's spread out and elongated quite a bit.
Which for me, if I were a shipper, I selfishly would like the stretch out or kind of bringing things in as I get them. Obviously, you're gonna have to pay more in storage fees and potential warehousing, but then I'm not almost left as a shipper like rushing to get things there or paying an exorbitant amount of transportation fees to make sure I have products getting to where they need to be. That part of the balance is nice, but then also I know on the flip side of that a lot of carriers, they do make a lot of their money in having that availability and having that carrier at the or that truck at the right place at the right time to make a little extra money. And so I think I'm curious to see is if once we kind of get, I don't want to say like some calmness or a return to normal, but once we kind of get past the upheaval that is always going back and forth with tariffs, I'm curious if to maybe next year we'll see that return to normalcy or that return to the early 2000s in regards to peak season. Because I know there was a lot of hope that this was going to happen this year, but unfortunately, there was quite a few incidents happening in the world that really took that prediction away.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And those some of those incidents are still going on and repeating themselves, whether it's war, famine, whatever it might be. If you look at the world supply chain and the number of ships there are on the seas at any one given point in any day, there's plenty. And
Yeah.
it's probably more complex to manage that network than it would be the highway system in the United States. It's very similar, and you can't necessarily change on the fly and do it efficiently. I think I'm with you. Our hopes here are that things kind of level off and we get through the tariffs and they settle in where they're going to settle in. Americans are really good at adjusting, and I'm sure we'll adjust. I don't know if it'll be a good thing or a bad thing, but we typically adjust and just move forward. And with a little bit of luck, that's going to be 2026.
I would like a little bit more than a little luck. I would love for things just to like calm down. That return to normalcy that we all yearned for in the COVID era and the pandemic era, I think it's well overdue. I think it's well overdue, and I would love to see it come back with a vengeance, or really just come back at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. 100%.
So that being said, I guess one of the things that that is always nice about peak season is that a lot of it is, driven by consumers. And I know we've seen some reports come out over the last few months that consumers are being more cautious with their spending. They're maybe downgrading some of their larger ticket items to maybe not the highest end. They're, the my favorite analogy is the frozen pizza index. So you're trading your night out for just maybe like a higher end frozen pizza. Um, so we're seeing a lot of that. But I think when it comes to peak season, these are things that have been called out in the past, but the consumers, like you said, they adjust, they always find a way. And I'm curious to see if that consumer demand will continue to be where it is or will continue to rise as we head into peak season because just because there have been so many almost, I don't want to say conflicting, but almost conflicting reports as to what consumer sentiment is and how they're feeling.
Yeah. Um, so I'm concerned about the same thing. I don't think we're going to see the rise during this peak season. I think we're going to be not flatline, but we're going to be at a low level in consistency, kind of where we are today, going all the way up in through not just Thanksgiving, but probably Christmas and the New Year's. If nearshoring actually takes off with factories being moved from different parts of the world into, we'll say, Mexico, I can see that creating another shift, and the shift is going to be in lane demand. Instead of most products coming in through the West Coast, they might be coming up into the Gulf, or they might go all the way around and end up coming up the East Coast, or they're just crossing the border at Mexico and or Canada. I think again we're going to adjust to that. To me, it's going to be interesting to see just how many manufacturers move from the Pacific Rim or China close enough to where they're going to be in Mexico. We know that there's already companies that are moving and putting up plants there that they're owned by the Chinese. They might be owned by us. They could be owned by anybody. But there's building going on that's going to increase capacity coming in from Mexico.
Oh, 1,000%. Like there's even like it's gotten to the point where I know that that demand, it's kind of I don't want to call it the calm before the storm because obviously nothing about nearshoring is calm. And it is growing so quickly. But in regards to that volume at, with cross border, whether it's the US and Mexico or the US and Canada, I know there's been heavy investment in infrastructure development and making sure that the roads can handle the increase in volume and that the ports of entry are finding ways to expedite it so that way shipments aren't getting stuck at the border and having to wait hours and hours and hours just to go through customs or to get their paperwork signed off. So I am very excited, curious and excited to see how that is going to continue to progress as that volume inevitably comes through the border there. And then I'm also curious how if it's going to affect U.S. Canada volumes because I know that that typically hasn't been the spot for a lot of the e-commerce or other things like that. I'm curious to see how that landscape is going to shift, not necessarily in regards to peak season, but as we get into 2026. This is just a mild tangent of cross-border freight.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to watch. I don't see trade being reversed from a volume standpoint between Mexico and the U.S. or Canada and the U.S. We have found a way to successfully tee off our regular trading partners. Hopefully, we can
Mhm.
maintain or rebuild some of those relationships. But the items today that come in from Canada are going to keep coming in from Canada. The one thing we need to remember, though, at the same time is we don't dictate Canada's rules. And I'm sure Canada's working very closely with the Pacific Rim and China to be most forefront about it. They're going to continue to do trade their way, as will Mexico and any other trading partner we have. So we can control, or we think we can control what we do in the US, but we need to be cognizant of what our trading partners, especially our close trading partners, are doing to make changes that are going to be worthwhile for them while still working with us in the US.
Correct. And that is going to be interesting. And I think we'll see that obviously as the USMCA gets renegotiated. I think they've already started it, but I think maybe it expires next year or the year. No, I think it is next year. Anyway, that'll be interesting to see how that, because inevitably that will drastically affect peak season for next year. But jumping back to this year, what are those conversations? Nope. conversations. What are those conversations with your shippers looking like in return in regards to like, hey, what are your volumes expected to be? Because I know that, having talked to some shippers and some in the planning departments, they're like, we don't necessarily know what this is going to look like because everyone's kind of adopted the wait and see philosophy. So, have you guys seen that with your shipper partners, or are some of them just like full steam ahead? Let's go. We have peak season to plan for.
Most of them that I'm familiar with are wait and see.
Mhm.
Obviously, if they're retailers and if they're retailers that are small box versus the large box, they have to continually cater to whatever changes they need to make in order to keep things flowing. But if you look at small to medium sized businesses, the smaller businesses that were small retailers, as an example, the de minimis is killing them. And a lot of them will go out of business if that's not fixed because they can't double the cost of their items and then still make up the money. People won't buy it, I guess is my point. So yeah, we're hearing that a lot of people are just to wait and see. I don't know of any one particular company that's forge forward, full steam ahead. Most even our larger shippers are more cautious as to what the next move is going to be. We still talk to them. We want to hear from them what they think is going to happen. As a 3PL and a transportation service provider, we're always trying to be positioned right so that we can add that capacity for our customers. So we're listening to everyone and we're trying to adapt as quick as we can so that we're there for them when they need us.
I'm kind of picturing, and this is probably an incorrect picture, but it's just what came to my mind of you guys like sitting in a room just full of like bulletin boards with notes everywhere and just going, okay, we're going to figure this out. We can do this, but we just need to be prepared for every single plan possible. And why that might not be the actual picture of what happens, it certainly has that feeling of like, there's just all this information, and now we have to make a plan. But there also needs to be 10 different plans in case one thing changes. And honestly, as a girl who loves a plan and a puzzle, it sounds like not a good time, but it sounds like a very unique time to really test those strategies and the how quickly you can adapt to some of those backup plans.
Yeah, yeah, we're doing the same thing, and I like your analogy of the whiteboard or things writing on the wall, so to speak. And you're right, it isn't kind of like that. Our approach has always been very close to that, though, making sure that we're prepared for any contingency that we need to prepare for. Good example with us, obviously, we're always building our carrier base out, but we're now handling a lot of intra Mexico freight coming from the ports going into manufacturing, whether it's going right into an auto production line or whether it's going into an assembler that's putting light bulbs together. We're building that capacity right now. We've got a pretty robust start to having a great product or service within Mexico. We've always done that. We've done that way before I even joined the company. So we've gotten good at it, and we've always got somebody's finger on the button that may need to be pushed in order to kind of shift and come at problems or challenges from a different angle.
I like it. Again, you kind of are just sitting there with like all of your options, and you're like, all right, you have that one guy that you're like, okay, press the purple button, and you're like, okay, purple button, go. Because it's that I think being able to be that resilient, that fluid, that adaptable to any different solution, I feel like that's first of all very hard to do and to do well, but second of all to be able to make those decisions, commit to them, and then also know that like, okay, we've made this decision, but also we need to go over here really quick to make sure that we can stay on track over here. I think that is very hard to do, especially at a scale. So huge congratulations to you guys for being able to do that so quickly and so fluidly.
Thank you.
So when it comes to peak seasons past, because obviously I'm assuming, like everyone, you finish a peak season and you got to do a little postmortem. Things we did good, things we did well, things we did poorly. You got to have that postmortem, peel back the curtain and say, wow, we really made a mistake here. We need to make sure we don't do this in the future. Or here's an area where we really shined. This is how we're going to move forward in the future with these types of situations. What are some of those lessons you guys have learned that you're taking with you into this peak season?
Well, the biggest lesson of all has been remain flexible. I mean, you have to be light on your feet because there will be changes that have to be made, but you have to have a plan for your customers that makes sense financially for them. You know, we've always taken the approach of we'll give you a quote. That quote comes with a truck. It's not a paper quote. And if we give a quote in any particular lane, we're going to honor that quote, even if we have to take it in the shorts. So we're always addressing the needs of today and trying to project what the needs of tomorrow might look like from those same needs. So I guess number one, stay light on your feet because you're going to have to adjust. Part of it's good. We make a variety of adjustments during the normal year. And a lot of times we're making adjustments just to get a better angle, but a lot of times also we're doing it to learn and keep our teams kind of on their toes. It's always good to have cross training and triple redundancy in anything you do operationally, and we find that to be a good tool for becoming agile and being able to adjust on the fly if and when changes are made or necessary.
I think that cross training is a really important component of it because you don't have to wait for, John to be in the office to make this plan. Like you have like John might be out of the office and then Susan can take over and say, "No worries, we've got this." Having that cross training means that you can kind of interchangeably slide people where they need to be, and so that way you can keep going, and it's the whole company's not going to fall apart if like one person's on vacation, or like a whole plan isn't going to come screeching to a halt because somebody's in a meeting or they just are away from their desk that day. So I think that cross training is probably one of the most underutilized components within a freight brokerage or a 3PL.
I guess I'd agree. Yeah.
All right, so we are running low on time today, Carl, but there's a question that everybody comes in the show has to answer, and you, sir, are going to be no exception. If you could build a house out of any food, what would you choose?
That's an easy question for me, and I put a lot of thought into it. So
Mhm.
you would want it to be low maintenance,
Mhm.
but yet accommodating and comfortable. So I would veer from the full-on chocolate cake to just a small cupcake with chocolate.
Oh, okay. So would it be like a house made out of like a single cupcake, like a giant cupcake house, or would it be like mini cupcakes stacked up to make a wall? And like that's how
The,
you would do it.
the house would be made out of the cupcake. I would live in the middle of the cupcake. I think that's where I would find my happiness. And
Yeah.
I think I'd be able to concentrate on the things I need to concentrate when I'm living in the cupcake.
Honestly, it sounds like a peak living situation, like 10 out of 10, no notes. That is a perfect choice. Because honestly, how many problems can find you if you're at the center of a cupcake?
Not too many. And if they're not really problems at that point, they're challenges. How do you eat yourself out of the middle of the cupcake? That would be the biggest challenge of every day.
Exactly.
Short answer is you don't.
Yeah. You just live blissfully in the middle of a cupcake. I love this answer, Carl. I I find no objection with it. Perfect.
Very good.
Solid answer. So if anyone has any questions on the perfect floor plan for a cupcake house, or if they want to talk about anything we've talked about here today, where can they find you outside the show?
They can find me at kphilhauer at circledelivers.com. Or anybody can reach us through our website, which is circledelivers.com. You've got my contact information. Feel free to share that if you have a purpose for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you.
You can find Check Call the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves shows. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.